Hi, good morning, everyone. Today is a good day. Happy Thursday. I think it's April 16th. Some days it's harder to keep track of the actual date than others in this sheltered in place. But like many of you, I found creative ways to keep myself in a rhythm and keep myself with my own sense of structure here at home. So I hope you're all creating that for yourselves. I see that Peter is on. Good morning, Peter. And I'm excited to share some reflections as I continue to just share reflections on this human freedom of independent will. I see Darlene is on. Good morning, Darlene. Today is a good day. And So let's begin, and I think this is as far as the mental side of independent will, of how we take our creativity, our self-awareness, and start to bring it into, or as Julia Cameron says, midwife our creative ideas and our creative visions into the world. This incorporating of the planning process, the project planning process, is a great way to do that, especially when it's intimately woven into creativity, and so that the actual written plan actually incorporates a vision board that has color and some form of art or inspiring images, and there is actually a writing out of core values, adding in your sense of purpose, or more conventionally it's called our personal mission, and really legitimizing these pieces into the project planning process, so they become critical pieces that guide our decisions, guide what we say yes to, what we say no to, how the project comes out. And incorporating some of these latest advances in the neurolinguistics of understanding how, if we will actually write out a vision statement, hand write out a vision statement, and hand write out a vision narrative, like writing out a narrative of what success will be like when we arrive there a month from now, 3 months from now, a year from now. It truly does change our motivation, and we live it first in our imagination, and then we live it a second time in reality. And I know that these things are often in business and in life are skipped over, and the attention goes to objectives, goals, and tasks. And my experience is that to miss out on some of the softer side of planning a project and losing the art, if you will, losing the creativity, is to me it's a loss. It's a loss to not hold the creative image and the creative inspirations that ignited our energy and our excitement, and not hold them there in our attention day by day, week by week, month by month. It's a loss, and often I believe it affects the outcome of the project. So I hope that these reflections have been helpful in your own creative projects and what all of you are bringing into the world. It certainly has mine, and this has been my practice for a while now, and in the sharing of it, it re-galvanizes my commitment and deepens my own understanding. So I hope there's a mutuality that's happening. So what I'd like to talk to today is about some creative ways to really work on this artist mulling. We talked about that in the Artist's Way book when we were really doing a deep dive into creative imagination. And the author, Julia Cameron, talks a lot about not to rush our creative impulses and inspirations. And she talks about this gentle churning and mulling as we go from the intangible inspiration, these sensory images that come through our imagination, mostly in our right brain, and how can we just work with them, bring attention to them until they're ready to move on to a formal written out project planning sheet. And there are some practices that an eclectic handful of practices that I've come across in my travels and my studies that I'd like to share, because they've been critical in helping me to have really powerful and satisfying starts, as well as they also end up being really wonderful creative unblocking practices. When I get stuck and I'm losing my imagination, my creativity, or my motivation, often I'll lean on these to just kind of break through the sludge of whatever's blocking me. And so these are the practices. One of the first practices is the artist practice is morning pages. Some of you are in the practice already. I am those morning pages in that creative study a few weeks ago are really about three pages of longhand cursive handwriting, or whatever version of longhand writing you have. Pen to paper, just writing out whatever comes to your mind. And so when I'm starting a project, I use that written form of it's basically a writing meditation, and it's a concentrative meditation. In other words, it's where I'm focusing my attention as I write, and I'll start with this creative image of something I want to bring forward. Maybe it's a business idea, maybe it's an event. Whatever it is, maybe it's a new movement, a new creative movement in the martial arts, or in a new exercise movement that where I want to bring maybe the world of fitness and the world of dance together and create a new exercise movement between those two. That's what's coming up for me. And I'll just start before I put it on the project plan and start hammering out logistics and objectives. I'll just write about it. I'll just longhand writing, just what I call, it's like morning pages, but it's more than that. It's what I call speculative writing. A lot of writing around, like, what if I were to bring this into the world? Well, just start writing and musing about it. And when I'm writing, I'm not filtering. I'm not judging and deciding whether it's practical or impractical. I'm not letting my analytical left brain come up with all the reasons why it won't work. I take that analytical side of me and I set it aside. That's not its job. Its job will come later. But here I'm just writing out, into that question of what if, and moving from what if to how might I, starting to move from the impossible to the possible, and then starting to allow myself to just keep writing on different scenarios on how that might come to be. And it's really what it is in the world of language arts. I learned many years ago, had a great language arts teacher, and it's just called free writing. That's another way to do it. And free writing isn't something that I've come to realize isn't something we just do in order to get into the real writing, like writing a paper. It's a practice that I've embraced as a lifelong meditation practice, writing meditation practice, to help myself unblock, to speculate on ideas and just let them start to just explore through writing. And I will say this: when I'm in my speculative writing, I'm just writing. I'm not worrying about spelling. I'm not worrying about punctuation. I'm not worrying about run-on sentences. I'm not editing. I think that's really key for all of you, any of you that are watching that are recovering perfectionists. I'm not. This is not prose that's going to be sent out and then evaluated or read by a mass audience. This is writing for the sake of my own creative process, and I think that's an important distinction, because even in the letting go during that time of that free writing, of that speculative writing around, how to bring a creative idea into the world. Even the letting go of the rules, of worrying about the rules of punctuation and spelling, is freeing. And I'll say that again. That in and of itself moves us from the left brain that has all the rules of grammar, and it moves us into the right brain that really is time free, and it has the liberty to combine and create anything. So that's one of my processes of starting to explore on the mental side of things a new idea before I actually move into the logistics. And what I'm noticing on a self-awareness level is I'm noticing as I write, I'm noticing my mood. I'm noticing my felt sense of excitement or not. I'm trying to notice is as I write and I explore in that writing meditation, if I'm coming more to life, if it's galvanizing me, and I'm moving from just entertaining the idea where I can actually feel that emotionally and that I want to start moving into action. That's a good sign to me that this idea is worth bringing into the world, that there's something behind this. And I do that by accessing the first human freedom, which is self-awareness. There I have to be aware of the narrative that's in my head, the thoughts that I'm thinking. I have to be aware of my mood and if that's shifting. And I have to be aware of my sensations and noticing if, I'm having a felt sense of expanding and learning how to interpret some of that, what is traditionally subconscious information. It can be an informant to me that, hey, this is something that I really want. There's really something behind this, and I'm excited about it. And when I say I'm excited about it, I mean, in other words, I can feel that. I can feel that at a self-awareness level, at a bodily level, and I've learned to trust that excitement, and then bring action, bring structure around that, because I trust that there's energy, there is true excitement at an unconscious level for me. And so I just wanted to share that. There's also wonderful practices to start in the years of coaching. There's a beautiful practice in the somatic coaching tradition of forming a declaration as we start to detect what it is that, what's next for us with regard to our personal growth, is we can take the inspired vision and we can form it linguistically into a commitment or a declaration. A declaration being a commitment to a future possibility. And in the morning, before we ever start the project planning process, we can just start to work with that. And speaking words like, I'm a commitment to, and then following that up immediately, holding that intention, moving that into a movement practice. The first way I was initiated into this was to speak a declaration. I'm a commitment to writing a book. And then following that by a 31 kata practice with Aikido Joe staff, and then finishing that kata, and then speaking that declaration again. And on a neuroscience level, when I first learned it, I just thought it was like, I had no frame of reference. I'd never done anything like that before. I was just doing it because I was curious about it, and it was new, it's fresh, it had some positive energy behind it, and I trusted the people that were teaching. And so I did it not knowing the neuroscience behind it. And what I've come to understand is what that does on a neuro-linguistic understanding is when we tie the declaration, our language and our intention, to a movement, in this case, a martial arts sequence, then we know that from neuroscience that neurons that fire together, wire together. So what's happening on a neuroscience level is that our intention, our words, and then our movement of our body become wired together, and it helps move us gently into skillful and effective action. So we're literally authoring and wiring our brain in a particular way, so that at a deeper level, at some of those deeper levels of what's traditionally our unconscious brain, our limbic brain, our autonomic brain, are now unifying with our thinking rational mind. And then you really get that integration of all three brains, and that's what can create that sustained action over time. So using our words, speaking of an intention or a declaration followed by a movement, and fusing them together is a powerful way to begin before we actually start pulling out the paper project plan. And that's been my practice for many projects. Might be a week of doing that, might be 2 weeks of doing that before I actually feel the impulse to pull out the project plan paper and start sketching it out. Sometimes it's just one time and I'm ready to go. But it's a great way to remember to include our whole nervous system, not just doing everything with our thinking brain. To remember that we have a complex and intricate human nervous system, and if we can access that being the limbic and the autonomic system, which are actually the more powerful of the three brains, then we can really start to open the door to sustained motivation, excitement, and wisdom that we otherwise wouldn't have if we just thought our way through the entire creative process. So I hope that's helpful. The other thing is I also use these practices not just to make the transition from the imagination into the more formal project planning structures. Not only do that, but also throughout any project, my experience is I'm not, some days I get stuck and I'm not motivated, or I'm tired, or whatever it is, and then I will use I'll use that practice of the declaration followed by a movement connected with the movement practice to help get me moving. That's really powerful. These days I spend a lot of time using the morning pages just to write about whatever I'm thinking or feeling, and just getting it out on paper, and then just tossing the paper in the recycling. So there's just real power. What I've come to realize, as I shared before, is that if I'm kind of blocked or stuck or having a hard time getting going, just that hand, take a literally, if you think about this, that declaration process, that's or first one, I'm speaking a declaration, and then my whole body's moving in a sequence. Well, if you look here at my hand, well, there's a lot of similarities here. If I just do 3 pages of stream of consciousness writing, if you just watch my hand, so if you notice here is that there's movement going on, is that my coordinated finger movement, though it's much smaller than doing a martial arts sequence, it's still the movement of my body. I'm still moving physical, mental, emotional energy as I write. And that can start to light the fuse of excitement again until I'm back on to fully engaged in the project again. And so it's really how I would describe it. It's learning how to work with ourselves skillfully. That we aren't just machines that we start and then we just drive towards completion at an accelerated rate. Human beings, we tend to flow. There's a rhythm to bringing anything, and there's ebbs and there's flows in our motivation and our energy. And if we start to slow down, we can meet ourselves and slow down in our practices, but listening to ourselves. We're slowing down, so our practices, we start writing about it, we can meet ourselves, listen to ourselves, take that downtime, but keep energy moving forward, and then that can naturally move into the next wave of motivation to finish the project. So I use a lot of these practices not just to make the transition from imagination to the planning and execution aspect, but also to help unblock myself on those days when my energy or my motivation starts to ebb, and just work with myself skillfully until it starts to flow again. So those are the softer practices that I wanted to share this morning around the mental side of inspired project planning. I think I mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again. And then I use four traditional questions for myself on the project. My imagination can get really big. I can really imagine some things on a high level scale, and then I just use those traditional project planning questions, like I assess the scope. I know I can imagine all of this, and do I have the capacity to bring this big of an idea into the world, or should I adjust the scope to something that's more within my ability amongst all the commitments that I'm holding, as a father, as a husband, as a professional, whatever all the commitments that we hold. We all hold many. And then asking again, what is the critical path? Are there any steps that need to be done early so they don't inhibit the movement of other steps? It's a good project planning discipline as we do the mental side of the planning. If we're going to delegate something, does our plan, once we have it all set up, can it pass the detail test? In other words, there's enough detail that I could take the plan, I could hand it to the person I'm working with, and there's so much detail on it, they really wouldn't have to ask me many questions, if any, because I put that much thought and attention and detail into the plan. And then being careful to avoid activity traps. We talked about the dopamine pathway and how we get this these neurotransmitters. There's a reward system in our limbic brain that rewards us for accomplishment, and that's a wonderful thing. It keeps us motivated, and sometimes it can pull us off track because we can get so busy knocking out tasks and we forget to recenter on the vision, that we're moving really fast in the wrong direction. So just being aware of that, remembering to look at your vision board, reflect on the original image of what you want to bring into the world, and using that as your compass to direct and continually refocus. And last, and certainly not least, is remembering the subjectives. What is your commitment to the mental emotional states that you are going to hold throughout the project? And I gave the example that many of my projects, my commitment is that I can hold a mental emotional state throughout the entire project of acceptance, enjoyment, and enthusiasm. And if I'm unable to hold one of those three mental emotional states, that's a pause button there. That for me, that's a time for reevaluation. If I'm noticing that I'm making forward progress, but I'm in a constant mood of resentment or frustration or apathy, well, I'm going to listen to those emotions and ask myself, is this really a worthy project to continue? Is it worth the psychic pollution that I'm creating in myself and all the people that I'm connected with just to accomplish something? And my personal commitment to myself is no, I am not willing to bring projects into the world and achieve things that I can't at least be in a state of acceptance as I move through the steps and the tasks. If I start to get stuck in resentment, frustration, whatever it is, any of those negative emotions, these days of my life, I'll make some adjustments to the plan to see if I can get back into those more positive states, and if I can't, I'll just declare that this project was, I enjoyed it for the time that it was here, and for me, it tells me to shift my attention to something else. For me, not all projects have to come to completion. That's the creative artistic process. That the process of itself is a joy. And sometimes if I set down a project because I'm not able to hold those subjectives, then if I set it down and I file it away and I move on to something that I can stay in a positive mental emotional state with, oftentimes, maybe a few months later, a year later, something will change in my life, and all of a sudden, I'm ready to pick it up again. And it's amazing to me how many of those projects return at a different time, at a different season of life. And now there's a lot of energy, a lot of positivity around them, and I can stay consistently in those positive subjectives all the way through completion. So I think that's real. I really think that's really important to talk about because in my experience, it's not being talked about. Objectives are being talked about, but subjectives are not being talked about, and often not being incorporated into the project plan and committed to as conditions of satisfaction. So with that, let's prepare ourselves for our morning meditation. And so I'll get this set up here. So let's start with just checking in with our mood. It's just feeling into our mood right now. My mood is hopeful. So notice what your mood is, meeting that without judgment, without attachment, and without resistance. Start to notice the most dominant sensation that you're feeling in your body right now on a self-awareness level. The most dominant sensation for me right now is a felt sense of warmth moving through my body from head to toe. As I center into that and I start to become present, all of a sudden I can hear the birds singing outside the window. When I was less present, I really couldn't hear that. So just notice what now starts as you become more present, more connected. What can you perceive? Let's center here with relaxing our body. So relaxing your eyes, softening your eyes, relaxing your jaw and your chin, relaxing the muscles of your neck, that throat area, and just bringing your shoulders up. Feel that contraction in your shoulders, and then dropping them down. Bringing your shoulders up. And dropping them down, taking a moment to feel. I feel a coolness and a tingling on my shoulders when I release them. And then softening your chest, relaxing your chest. You can imagine this chest area opening up like a book or a scroll. So just imagine that opening, like an eagle opening its wings, whatever imagery that is powerful for you. Then relaxing your diaphragm, our large breathing muscle, lower border of your rib cage. Relaxing your belly, so softening your belly. And relaxing your hips. And one practice is like your shoulders, you can contract your hips and then release them. You can contract up and up again and let them go. And then you can start by relaxing your thighs, knees, calves and feet, toes, starting to create some space in your body. And then starting to bring your attention to your vertical line, bringing that self-awareness. And right now, do you feel a felt sense like you're being compressed? Do you feel tall? And just first noticing there. Again, meeting that without judgment, attachment, or resistance. We first want to become aware before we make any changes. And then we can center here, center into our length. So just find our way into our length, feeling ourselves as a bridge between heaven and earth. We're straightening and settling at the same time. Feeling our somatic line of dignity here. And let's take a deep breath in through the crown of our head. Pull that breath through with your attention and your imagination. Exhale through your feet and hands. Take a deep breath in through your feet and hands. Pull that breath through. Exhale out through the crown of your head. Bring attention to width. So left hand on your chest, or heart center, right hand on your belly. So start to feel into your body from left to right. It's a social emotional plane, our balance between self and others. As you feel in here, you feel the boundaries of your skin, the boundaries of your clothes touching your skin. Imagine that as your boundaries, your personal boundaries. What you say yes to, what you say no to, what you negotiate, your boundaries, when is it time to insist, when is it time to quit, what you're going to say yes to. Think of the ways that you've taken care of yourself and developed and cultivated yourself spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, in the past week, yesterday. So as I'm feeling in here, I'm imagining the workout I did yesterday, where I took care of myself physically. 2-hour workout, very satisfying. Mentally, I read a book that I'm really excited about, an audiobook and a written book. Both of them business books, and I'm really enjoying them, developing my mind. I think about the call on a social emotional level that I had with a friend yesterday for an hour, connecting interpersonally. And then also thinking of my meditation practice yesterday and developing myself spiritually. So just connect to how you took care of yourself, developed those parts of yourself, all 4 of those dimensions. Sometimes called to live at a bodily level, to love at an interpersonal level, to learn at a mental level, and to leave a legacy at a spiritual level. To live, to love, to learn, to leave a legacy. You can feel that in your width. How did you develop those 4 areas? And then extending out, starting to include somebody maybe that is in your home right now. Maybe it's a person, maybe it's a 4-legged friend. You can start to extend out to include nature, including the skies, the grasses, that beautiful tree out to my right. And starting to extend out, including all of you here on this live post. So Alex, extending out to Alex, and Elizabeth, and Darlene, and Peter. It's just extending out there, starting to open up in our width, opening up to others, while still feeling ourselves. It's an ongoing art, is to feel ourselves while extending to others. And then let's extend out, and maybe we can include an enemy of ours, an opponent of ours, and still have a healthy boundary with them. And at the same time, extending out in this moment, extending some love and compassion to them as well. And then let's center here using imagery. Take a deep breath in through your left hand. Pull that breath through the center of your body with your attention and your imagination. Exhale out through your right hand. And deep breath in with your right hand. Pull that breath through and exhale out your left hand. You might even notice as you do these imagery practices, there's a softening in your body at a muscular level. You're relaxing down, feeling yourself centered in your length, feeling yourself centered in your width for the day. And then let's start to feel into depth, our somatic depth. So just leaning forward, and as you lean forward, imagine that as your vision for the day, for the week, for the next 3 months, your projects, your purpose, those longings or yearnings that are in you for personal change. Where are you headed? And then slowly leaning back and leaning into your back space. As you feel into the space behind you, feel your history, all those experiences that have shaped you and have informed you, the wisdom of your experience. Leaning into that. All those experiences that have formed your belief system, have formed your character, have formed the actions you take under pressure. And just become aware of those. Feel your teachers at your back. Feel your friends and family at your back. Feel your talents and your competencies, your intelligences at your back. You can imagine that. You can imagine that as this huge support behind you. Something you can lean into. You know, imagery, you can imagine it like this huge dinosaur tail. Or you can imagine it like this firm, this robust wall or a huge tree behind you that you can lean into. The image that comes to mind is one of the redwoods in Northern California. Like imagining your history as, I'm imagining that as something I can lean into that's so strong it can support me as I step into the unknown. Or whatever imagery is powerful for you. And then start to bring your attention to, again, your declarations, your visions, your longings in the space in front of you. Pulling you forward, inspiring you to take the call to adventure, to step out of the known world, the familiar world, and take that brave step and step into the unknown world. To step into your hero's journey. Let's center here. Center between the space behind you, the space in front of you. Let's take a deep breath in, about 10 feet in front of us, breathing in our future, if you will, and exhaling out into our past. Take a deep breath in from our past, pull the wisdom of our experience forward, and exhale out into the future. Take a deep breath in from the space in front of you, pull in your future, through the dark spaces of your body, and exhale out through your back. And just feel here. Centered in your depth, being in a right relationship with past and future. And as you feel yourself physiologically balanced here, the weight of your body resting on your bones, allow that to be the felt sense of the present moment, the only moment that ever really is. Now let's bring attention and energy to our right hand. In other words, we feel the temperature of our hand. I feel my hand is warm. I can feel the shape of my 5 fingers. I'm placing that on my belly. As I feel my hand on my belly, the sensation of that, it helps me drop out of my thinking brain into my feeling self, my feeling brain. And dropping into our center. Taking 3 deep breaths here, a deep breath into your center. And exhale. A deep breath in to your felt sense of purpose. And a deep breath into the mystery. I invite you to slowly start to close your eyes, entering into that meditative and that contemplative space, that inner space. As we enter into our inner body, set your intention. Remind yourself, for the sake of what that you're doing this meditation practice. And then holding that intention throughout the silence. My body, you are an animal whose appropriate behavior is concentration and discipline. An effort of an athlete, of a saint, and of a yogi. Well trained, you will become for me a gate through which I leave myself and a gate through which I enter myself. A plumb line to the center of the earth and a cosmic ship to Jupiter. My body, you are an animal for whom ambition is right. Splendid possibilities are open to us. My body, you are an animal whose appropriate behavior is concentration and discipline. An effort of an athlete, of a saint, and of a yogi. Well trained, you will become for me a gate through which I leave myself and a gate through which I enter myself. A plumb line to the center of the earth and a cosmic ship to Jupiter. My body, you are an animal for whom ambition is right. Splendid possibilities are open to us. And as we close our practice today, remind yourself again, for the sake of what? And then on your next exhale, very slowly and very gently begin to move your arms and legs. And very slowly and very gently begin to open your eyes and let the outside world come back in again. take a moment to recognize your mood and if that's shifted since the beginning of our time together, the beginning of our meditation. Notice if the sensations that are most in your awareness have shifted. And become aware of the thoughts that you're thinking. And notice if they've shifted. Become present to your breath. Notice if your breath, the rhythm of your breath has shifted. And just become aware of what the learning was today, what was memorable, what brought you to life in this sharing and this reflection, and pay attention to that. That may inform and shape your day. So I just want to, again, thank everybody for creating our virtual community and starting this day, and each one of these days that we've started in a really powerful, intentional way, and exploring the power of our internal human freedom as we're in this exploration. I'm grateful for the virtual circle that is created on this live post. So thank you all. Tomorrow I'm going to share some reflections and move from the mental side of independent will, and really start to explore how do we start to expand and becoming aware of and exercise our independent will through our words linguistically. And just sharing some reflections on that with regard to, how do we bring forward our intentions with the way we coordinate through language, called our elocutionary acts. Those are, how do we move into independent will through how we say yes, how we say no, how we negotiate and counteroffer, how do we insist, when is it time to quit, and so I'm going to explore independent will as it exists in our language, in our elocutionary acts, sometimes called speech acts. So blessings on your day. May everybody have an inspired and productive day, moving towards our inspired and creative ideas, connected to a felt sense of life and vitality to guide us on this day. So bye for now, and we'll see you at 7 a.m. tomorrow. Goodbye.